Speaking of Cults podcast is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from it is at the user's own risk. The views, information, or opinions expressed by the host and guests are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical or other professional advice. Hello and welcome to the Speaking of Cults podcast. This is Chris Shelton, your host. Thank you very much for joining me again this week. We're just going to have a little Scientology chat this week, and I have invited a wonderful woman, a veteran of Scientology, and someone who has definitely seen and heard a few things when it comes to the world of Scientology. This is Patty Moher. And she is a, like I said, veteran Scientologist. So let's just get right into the conversation. Patty, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm going to enjoy this, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Let's just chat. So first off, let's go ahead and let everybody know, who are you? What is your basic background when it comes to your involvement with the Church of Scientology?
Briefly, I joined Scientology through the Narconon program in 1973. I was on drugs at the time. I became a Scientologist through that program. Was recruited for staff after maybe a couple of months after I finished. Well, actually, I was on staff for several years before I stopped smoking pot. But that's another story.
Oh, we'll get there. Okay. Now you have me intrigued.
So yeah, all of the Narconon staff were all smoking pot for a few years. They gave up all the other stuff. So no LSD, no hardcore drugs, just everybody smoked pot. And so I was recruited as the reg. So I would bring people into Narconon and convince them to start. And then the executive director of Narconon, this is going to be like 73 or 4, passed away suddenly and nobody wanted the job. So I took over as executive director of Narconon. I was like, 22, didn't know anything. From there, I was recruited into the Guardian's office. I worked for Social Coordination Bureau, which was over anything that delivered L. Ron Hubbard's tech. So Narconons, Applied Scholastics, the schools, anything that used the technology, I was over managing them. It was direct control from my position as the Guardian's office to the groups outside. I was there for a couple of years, left staff, had a child, which I wanted, raised him, and then slowly came back into Scientology and worked for the Guardian's office was disbanded for terrible behavior, but they were really just reorganized under another name called the Office of Special Affairs. And I was recruited to work there in their intel investigative unit for about 16 years while I was public and also did the bridge to total freedom. And anyway, when I got all the way up to OT3 and was right around, I think around 2000, I was sent by OSA to the internet to a very specific group called Alt Religion Scientology, which is archived on Google, but it was an all text message board, if you will, bedlam, mayhem all the time. But it was where ex-Scientologists and critics could all meet up and discuss things. And I was very fortunate to hook in with a bunch of non-Scientologists who helped me learn how to post completely anonymously, this thing called remailers, which I don't even know if they have them anymore. But there was no way they could figure out, OSA could figure out who I was. And I posted successfully for many years until they figured it out. But the reason I went to Alt Religion Scientology in the first place was I was doing some work on Bob Mitten and the Lisa McPherson Trust, which at the time in 2000 was the big, he was the #1 SP on the planet. He was a millionaire. He was dumping a lot of money into exposing Scientology. And they needed me to go and read the mission statement for the Lisa McPherson Trust that was on Alt Religion Scientology, because they didn't have it. Was 2000. I don't even know if we had email going on back then. It was like crazy, different time. And so I ended up at ours reading this. And while I was there, I sort of snuck around and looked to see what was going on. Now, my viewpoint was, I'm an OT3. I'm an OSA volunteer staff member for Invest. I have a high confront of evil. So I should be able to read this stuff and not be affected by it. Well, after about a month, I was very affected by it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when there's a whole series of things that came to the climax of me, the light bulb turning on and going, oh my God, I got it. I realized it was like no other moment in my life. It was just thunderous, like wake up. And it was a long time coming. And when I got on the other side of that, I spent about 2 weeks doing nothing but reading the internet. I was glued, reading everything I could. And when I got done, I was pissed off. And my decision was that I'm going to expose these guys. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 20. I was in for 27 years, and I've been out for 25 now. So I'm about balanced. And that's been my thing. I like to expose them. I like to expose the organization. I like to tease them and make fun of them, because that's what you do. Not to individual Scientologists, but to the organization. I feel individual Scientologists should be dealt with differently. Yeah. But ridicule and exposure is what I do with the organization, and I have fun. I mean, if you're not criticizing Scientology, it's not fun, right? So that's right. That's right. That's sort of the brief of how I got here. Anyway.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's awesome. You and I were both in for 27 years. That's funny. And
that's funny.
And then come out. I mean, I guess that's sort of my official years, even though really, it was since I was about 3, right? But right. But also I can almost word for word how you describe getting on ARS, seeing all these truth bombs, finding out, oh my God, there's this that I didn't know about. And the anger, the betrayal, the outrage that we would feel over that. Completely parallel with my own rabbit hole dive, right? Because I wasn't on ARS, of course, because that was back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. But as a Sea Org member, I was having to track down Scientologists. And so I was looking up stuff on the internet, and Tony Ortega's blog kept coming up. And so where you were getting it through ARS, I was getting headlines of Tony Ortega's articles. And, wow. And somehow it was the blue asbestos on the free ones that caught my eye and made me open the first link to Tony Ortega's blog, where I actually went in and looked at something. And
wow.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, same here as far as wake up call, right? What do you remember? And it's obviously fine if you don't, it's been a long time, but I was curious, do you remember what things or the nature of what it was you read during that month that caught your eye and made you start going, wait a minute?
It was 2 things. The first thing was a woman, her name is Katerina Parnell. She was ex-Sea Org, and she got into a conversation with me on ARS about forced abortions and how she had one. And I didn't believe her. But she wrote in the kindest way to me to try to get me to understand. She really worked at not like bashing me over the head with facts, but she laid it out so that I could see it. And that caused a huge hole in the wall of, I call it my bricks. I envisioned my indoctrination as like being surrounded by bricks, and between the bricks, or maybe on the other side of the bricks, there's these filters. So even if you get a hole in the brick, you still filter all the information through your Scientology thinking. So that made a huge hole, this woman being so kind, and explaining that, yes, this does happen. And not that I'm anti-abortion, but the fact that they would force this upon a woman, that so she didn't have the right to decide for herself. And that was really upsetting to me. And then a second thing happened. There was a lot of motion going on, and I somehow was able to receive emails via something. I can't remember how I set it up, but this Italian OT8, who has since passed away. His name was Enzo Picone. He wrote to me an email, and saw that I was confused and not sure how I was going to handle things. And he basically took the policy, keeping Scientology working, and he broke it down to explain to me how Hubbard was wrong, and to had me look at it in a totally different way. And when I got done reading that, first of all, it came from an OTA who's got a lot of clout in the Scientology world. These guys are like demigods. So if an OTA writes to you, you're going to listen. If you're a true dedicated Scientologist, these guys are like, their word is golden. So the fact that he explained it all to me and sort of really broke open the door. At that point, the wall just broke down. And that's when I started reading everything I could. And it was hard. I mean, I couldn't read the OT level. I mean, I had done up to OT3, but I didn't go near certain things at first. I was afraid of everything. And I would have to it was like tiny steps, breaking through, reading more and more. Even till today, I'm still go like, wow, like, oh yeah, of course. And it's like, I don't know if it'll ever end. It's like a constant, it almost happens, it happens in stages. It's like, there's the big peel, and then you peel more. It's like peeling the onion, as that broadcast says. I peel and peel and peel, and then you come to a point, and you go, okay, I'm good. No, there's more. Oh, geez, this, I never thought of that, And all the time it takes. I was talking to my sister about this. What it really takes is the ability to say you were wrong.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
If you can't say, oh man, I was wrong, you're not going to get there, because if you have that thing where I'm right. And, I did like a quick step through the free zone, but most people don't land there, except the ones who can't believe that they're wrong. and so, yeah. So a lot of stuff over the years are just peeling, making me a kinder person, because I was awful. I was one of them, I was a mean Osa Geo chick, and people were afraid of me because I was rotten, and now rotten and proud. It was awful. Just I hated it, and looking inward and seeing that I really try to go for the kindness. Sometimes I slip up. And I say terribly stupid things, but I try my best.
I so hear you. Oh, some of the things I'm like, oh God, I really wish I hadn't said that. Yeah, yep. I hear you. We're all too human, aren't we? But this is awesome. I'm curious. Let's talk about this for a minute, because it's been the point of question for people over time. I've certainly received questions about this over the years, about Scientologists, OT Scientologists such as yourself, who were assigned the internet detail, right? Okay, you're gonna go look at this stuff. You're gonna deal with this stuff, or you're gonna find information we need because you're OT. You can go look at this stuff, and if they say Xenu, it's not going to be a big deal. Right. So
yeah, absolutely.
assignment or that duty I understood when I was in, and I barely understood it when I was in because OSA was always at arm's length away from what I was doing. But even after leaving it, it was sort of, well, yeah, they get OT, OSA staff, or they get volunteers who are OTs, and those are the guys who go look at the stuff that they feel might be sensitive because all of us are saying OT stuff all the time on our channels and in our blogs and whatnot. We just dump Xenu and body thetans all over the place, right? And we don't have any problem with it because we don't care, but
No.
they sure do. They got to be real careful about who sees that stuff. I'm wondering these days who they have working on that stuff. And you keep tabs on this stuff like I do. Do you think they still have OT volunteers, or do you think they outsource it to private non-Scientologists now, kind of like what they do with the PIs and the lawyering?
I don't have the facts about it, but my
Sure.
guess is based on the number of staff left, because there's been a huge exodus over the years.
Yeah.
And being able to qualify to work for OSA or GEO takes a lot of quals. You got to be a real brainwashed person to do it. They only take the most. I'm thinking, again, this is totally supposition, that they are outsourcing, and they are maybe having, with AI now, they could get transcripts and they can get it summarized, and then they can ask it any mentions of DM or mentions of OT levels.
True.
And that's
True.
passed on. And who it goes to at OSA, these guys, unlike me, who was public and has access to a lot of information and freedom, these guys are also checked regularly. So that if they have doubts, where they read something and they get a little, hairy about it, they can get put into sec checks frequently. I was out living in Connecticut, working for Boston. Nobody was sec checking me for years. Nobody was checking to see, how I felt about things or if I had doubts. So they just kept growing. If they had ordered me to a sec check, they might have stopped it if they paid for it, because I wasn't paying at that point. But they could have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was waiting for the sec check to come, and it never came. And I think that's part of it, is because sec checks, that whole, it's like a reindoctrination when you get a sec check, because they clean out any sort of doubts that you might have, and evil purposes get assigned, and whatever they do. But sec checks will sort of keep you in the fold, and
That's right.
and I didn't get them.
Yeah, funny parallels in our experience, just because when I was out and about getting on the internet, seeing Tony Ortega stuff, I'd go back for a sec check between the projects I was on, but sometimes they just didn't have somebody to sec check me. So, and it was so important to get me, back out on the road, right? It's like, go write your OWs. Oh, okay. And I write down some stuff, and here you go. And away we go. And I'm not writing down that I'm reading Tony Ortega's blog,
Right.
so there we go, right? And a little bit becomes a little bit, becomes a little bit, and there you go. And it's funny how it's like you said, you were waiting for the sec check. It's sort of like this. That's how the thought policing works, that we would sort of do to ourselves,
Yeah.
How did you experience that?
The sec checks?
No, the thought, in terms of thought policing, how did you control before the dam broke, how were you keeping yourself in check?
Well, I was hardcore. I mean, I believed, like, to the bone, this is like the real thing. And my indoctrination was like, if you have doubts, that, what you have overts, and, you got to look for those. And, but then when I started reading, I also felt like, well, I'm an OT, and I have a high confront. I've done my PTSS. I know the tech. I know what these guys are about. I can handle this. And yeah, I did for like the first month. I actually got an account on some place where they couldn't see my IP, and I talked to critics. I mostly fought with them. And that just as I was about to leave and confess to OSA everything that I did, this OT8 fellow showed up with an email for me. And that just put the kibosh on the whole thing, and the doors swung open. But yeah, I was constantly, well, it's the indoctrination. I knew all that stuff cold. I knew how it worked. And being in doubt was a lower condition, and I had it all like really jammed in tight. So I was lucky. I could still, it's funny. I look at Facebook. Most of those people in Boston are still in. It's scary.
No, isn't it crazy? It's so wild how people will just quadruple down on this stuff. But I was there, we were there, so I guess we get it. But it's still, it hurts my heart a little bit because we managed to extricate ourselves with a little bit of help, a little bit of exposure. But these guys, they're just so anchored in there. I'm curious in terms of when you were working for OSA, arguing with critics online and bashing and interchanging with them, what kind of instructions were you given?
Oh, I was doing that on my own.
Oh, so it was just kind of, you were just off on your own back doing
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, I didn't have any permission at all. I did that very secretively because I felt I could. I mean, what is it? The not the one of the code of honor or code of a Scientologist about speaking freely and having the free, the whole
The
First
creed,
Amendment thing.
the creed of the church. Yeah, speak freely your own opinions right upon.
I was a big creed fan. That was my excuse for doing anything. I got a creed here that says I can do this, So
you heard it there. You heard it. She's a Creed fan right there.
I was a Creed. Oh, cool. And it's funny because, I was looking at this this past week. I was thinking, and with that question, those two big incidents, the woman who talked to me about the forced abortions and then the letter. But prior to that, I was looking at, there are a lot of, sometimes it isn't always just one big boom. For me, it was a series of steps that kind of broke it down over the years. One of the first ones was I was in Houston, and I was in this used bookstore, and I'm wandering around because I loved used bookstores. And there was this book. I don't even remember who the author was, but it was about saving your marriage. And my sister at the time was having trouble with her marriage. And I thought, and I picked the book up and I thought, maybe this will help her. And then I went, and I put it down and I went, no, I can't do that because that's not Scientology. And then I went, what? That's messed up. Okay, push that away. And then my sister, Wendy, this is years ago. She passed away years ago, but she was a Wiccan priestess or something. And she said, why don't we get a website and we'll sell all this Wiccan stuff and we'll make a fortune? This was early on before there were websites for this. And I'm like, yeah, well, I really can't do that because it would be like promoting another religion. And she looked at me, she says, that's weird. There's something wrong with that, Patty. And I'm like, yeah, I guess there is, so it's like little tiny things that were making me go, that's kind of messed up. And those two big ones for sure.
Yeah.
And then my dad, he was also, he was a great guy. And he knew I was in a cult and he knew about Handle the Disconnect. He had read all the anti-Scientology books. I found him in his bedroom. He was very, he kept in touch with me always. He wanted to discuss Scientology. He asked me questions and with interest. But I now look back and see they were very pointed to get me to think. And so I think, he really helped me a lot. I didn't know that that's what he was doing. I thought
smart
he was just
guy.
Yeah, very smart
guy.
Yeah. He kept talking to me, and he never gave me enough ammo to disconnect. Not that I wanted to, but it just made me realize that his not fighting with me and not pushing back, but making me talk about it, kept my family together. He kept the family together. He kept me from disconnecting, because he knew if he got too intago, I would shut him off, and he didn't
Exactly.
want that. So he was also, so all my family kind of really had a big part of it. Very slowly, though, very slowly.
Interesting. Were you the only person in the family who was in Scientology?
Yeah, I was the only one. I'm the oldest daughter of three, and it's so funny because my dad, he was very well, he was a self-educated guy, but he was very worldly in so many things. He was well read, as they say,
Yeah.
and so he knew exactly what Scientology was, and yeah, it
Wow.
was a good thing. Yeah,
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome because
wonderful.
absolutely, because I run into a lot of families, of course, who blow it. They mess it up. They go the opposite direction. They get all mad.
Right.
They get upset. They want to argue about it. When it comes to a cult, whether it's Scientology or other groups. And so it's always so wonderful when you find somebody who actually does get it all on their own and
Mm,
puts two and two together on how to deal with a cult member, which is exactly as you described him dealing with you. And you get the result. You kept the family together. And
yes,
that's, as my mom dealt with me, right? Always careful to never go past the line because she didn't want to create that image in my mind that she's antagonistic. Because as soon as that
exactly.
happens, I can't
Right.
talk to you anymore. And it's such a thought stopping wall that comes down. You just stop thinking. And I
Yes,
think,
absolutely.
and I think that's the thing that's hard for people to wrap their wits around, because rationally it doesn't make any sense. There is
Right.
no good reason for it, but you're not thinking. It's
Right.
such an emotional, fear-based thing. And I think that's part of why it's hard for people to understand how shunning happens.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. They being talking to me about it. Plus, you have to. The other thing, and again, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in Boston. My family is all Boston, and it was kind of like there's a in Scientology that would be called antagonism, but there was the family was antagonistic to each other, but in the most playful of ways. And
Right.
all I can say is in the Boston way. My father, hey, get out of here, go play in traffic. It's like, but he didn't want me to play in traffic. It's just the way people talked back then. So when he would occasionally we would talk, and at the end of the conversation, he would go, you're just a cultist. And I would laugh because he would do it in the Boston antago way, right? So
That's
I
right.
couldn't, but I knew he meant it, but he did it in a fun way. And
Right.
yeah, if families can not not attack and not accuse and not worry and not yeah, don't give them any money certainly, but talk, have
That's
them
right.
explain things. What do you do? How does that work? Tell me about it. What's the tone scale? How does that work? Just be interested, and eventually, and ask questions. Hey, what is this thing about Lisa? What is this thing about Leah Remedy? What's that all about? Just ask. Don't concentrate on that. But if you're in communication about Scientology, you're more likely to get an answer like, "What about it?" And that might bring some interest for them looking. So yeah,
That's right.
definitely, kindness is never wrong. It's just never
Mm,
wrong.
mm. Love it. So true. So
Yep.
absolutely true. If you when you're looking at long-term outcomes, kindness is the way to get there. Like I said, I have my moments too where I don't necessarily demonstrate that truth because I get pissy in the short term, just like everybody else does. But
Yep.
I try to keep focused on that, and that's why I even tattooed it on my arm. It's chaos, be kind. is the tattoo on my arm, right? Because
What I have? I have one tattoo.
oh
It's a
yeah.
picture. It's a picture of the Guy Fawkes mask from Anonymous.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah,
wow. That's a great symbol. That's
because
awesome.
because I love that group so much, and
Oh
plus
yeah.
I'm the one who spawned them anyway. So no, not really. That was a joke. My releasing the Tom Cruise tape with others caused the anonymous thing to happen. So I always felt like I was the person who spawned them, So
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think a lot of people know about the Tom Cruise turtleneck video, as it's sometimes called, right? Which is this
yeah,
inside video that Tom Cruise made for internal showing in the Church of Scientology when he was getting this Freedom Medal of Valor award. And I think this was in 2004. And
yes.
um, this was presented to him, and it was this big faulty role within the church. And we were all treated to, years of being compared to Tom Cruise after this happened, right? Even as Sea Org members, we were told we were not as dedicated as Tom Cruise was, which we all knew was bullshit, but we, kind of gritted our teeth and put up with it. But the release of that video is something I don't actually know the origin story on. I thought Mark Bunker had something to do with it, but maybe I don't know. Could you tell us how that video got out?
I used to get, once I became known under my own name, once I was outed by OSA, I would tell people to send me stuff. And I got all kinds of stuff. I got the funeral video, the We Stand Tall video, the IRS video. People sent me these, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I'd find somebody who was tech savvy and could get them up on the net for me. Well, somebody sent me the event, the video. It was the second half of it. It was a 2-part video of the IAS event where Tom Cruise won that. Came in the mail. It was one of those VCR type deals. It wasn't even a CD. We were talking back in the day.
Wow.
And I plugged it in, and I'm like, watched it by myself, and I'm like, wow. Well, I had an SP party coming up. Every year for 5 or 6, 7 years, I threw these SP parties, gave out awards. It was a great thing. And the purpose of that party was to network people. But anyway, I had, I don't know, maybe 20 SPs sitting in my living room. Excuse me. And I threw that video in. And I remember it was like Dave Turetsky and all these like ARS guys, we're all sitting on the floor watching the video and hysterically laughing at this Tom Cruise part. And it really didn't hit me how important that was. Mm-hmm. Well, at the same time, a guy named Andrew Morton, who was an author who had done a book on Princess Diana, he was doing a biography on Tom Cruise. And he was working with some other anti-SPs, Scientologists, to get that information. And I made copies of this video, and I sent it to all my SP friends. And one of them said, damn, we should try to get this up on the internet for when Morton releases the book. And I'm like, yeah. And he was about to do a media tour. He was going to go on Good Morning America and whatever the NBC is, the Today Show, talking about the Tom Cruise book. So we're down to the wire. I don't know how to get the video up on the net. So I get with a bunch of 4 or 5 different SPs, and I said, we got to get this thing up on the net. And I FedEx it out to California, and she drives it up to Mark Ebner in Los Angeles, and he starts putting it together. In the meantime, I think I sent one to Bunker. I sent one to Australia. I sent them all over the place and said, get it up. We got to get this thing up. Well, Mark Bunker was the one who was able to get it up. But he's the one who was able to put it on the net. And then it quickly came down because he was afraid he was going to lose his channel. And then I think it was Gawker, which is no longer exists. So maybe it was Radar. It was one of those, picked it up and basically thumbed their nose at Scientology and said, we're playing it. And it just went viral after that because it was so crazy. You saw the real Tom Cruise for the first time.
Exactly. Nobody had seen that version of Tom Cruise before, unless they were watching him be, kind of a crazy person in a movie. they had never seen anything like this. And this is not Tom Cruise playing anybody but himself. And it's really something to watch. And it was quite something to see. Now, of course, while this is all happening, I'm, cooling my jets in the Sea Org, approaching my RPF time. So I had no awareness of any of this stuff going on at all. I didn't find out about this for a few years after I, until I left, did I learn, about the couch jumping and, about Tom Cruise on Oprah's show, right? And about this video and about the release of it out into the public. And this thing called the Streisand effect, where Scientology had failed so miserably with ARS in the 90s to
shut it down.
Shut it down, exactly. And then this happened. So this was almost like, ARS 2.0 in terms of they got a Streisand effect with the OT3 uploads back on the ARS days. But then this Tom Cruise video drops and the church goes into overdrive to try to get it erased from the internet. And it was that which turned the internet against Scientology. And this is just a few years before the whole anonymous protests and everything that are happening, because that's 2008, I think it was, when that went down.
Because the video went up in 2008, right before then, because I didn't get it for a few years. It was sitting.
It was okay. So it wasn't 2004. Okay, got
2004 was the event, but I didn't get the video until 2008 when it just mysteriously showed up in my mail. I mean, I have such a thing about keeping people safe who would email me stuff. I would get a package. I wouldn't even look at the return address. I'd take it out. I'd rip it all up and, put it in the burn pile. Wow. I didn't want to know who you were because I was afraid if I was deposed, I would have to tell on you. So and even to this day, there's people on all these different forums with different names. I have no idea who they are because my brain says, you don't want to know who they are, don't tell. So I've so respected other people's anonymity that I have no idea who sent me this stuff. Wow. But thank you for doing it.
Right because that was the spark that really lit the fire. I mean, prior to that, we had court cases, we had exposés every now and again on news stories. We had probably the biggest thing was that Time magazine Cult of Greed article, right. And the Nightline interview with David Miscavige. And that was about it. I mean, there wasn't a lot of talking about or exposing Scientology. But when that Cruise video hit, man, oh my God, like it was just kind of everywhere. And like you said, it sparked the fire to, begin this entire years long protest against Scientology by Anonymous. And I mean, thousands of people showed up for those protests. Those were not little tiny things. There were hundreds of people in Los Angeles, London, New York. I mean, they were just showing up. What were your thoughts about that whole thing once that started back then? It must have been incredible to be part of it.
Oh, I was thrilled. I attended a few protests in New Haven and a few up in Boston. And the Boston had some of the key anonymous players. I know they didn't have leaders, but they had leaders. They had people who were forwarding. How do you not deal with somebody taking in charge? He was up in Boston, or one of them was, and I brought every CD, everything I could find, that Scientology junk stuff, for them to get up on the internet for me, and I gave them. They made copies. I was just so happy with the attitude that they had, which is the same as mine, which is basically ridicule the organization or make fun of them, don't take them seriously, tell them a bunch of jamokes and laugh, ha ha ha, because they don't like that, and that's what they deserve. I mean, that's some pretty stupid stuff in Scientology, and the fact that they have a policy on joking and degrading to make sure you don't do that is all the more reason why you should. And it's very important to any sort of authoritarian cult type thing that you stand up and you say, no, I'm not going to let you do this. I'm going to tell you the truth. And even at personal, I mean, what are they going to take from me? Number one, I had nothing. My family was out. I was working in a donut shop, which really pissed them off. I have to, by the way, because I used to write these while I was still anonymous. I would go to events and report on them on ours. I would write all up who was there, what happened, and I was very careful about not giving up my location. And I would describe how I dressed, how I looked, and then I would go with my husband. And I described myself sort of as this tall, very thin, sort of sexy businesswoman. I'm a short, fat chick who works at Dunkin' Donuts. So I totally took them by surprise, right? So because I remember when they finally did my hate page, they're like, and she works in a donut shop. She's not a business person, and she only has one kid, and she said she had three. I lied. Yes, I lied. I lied. To throw you off. You believe me? So anyway, I used to have so much fun doing that kind of stuff, going to these events. And what happened was, after a couple of years of doing this, I must have been put on a short list because I would start getting calls from my friends at OSA, like, hey, did you go to that event? And I'd be like, yeah, that was a great event, blah, 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 blah. And that happened a couple of times. And I'm like, oh, they're checking to see. So what happened is I had my OTA friend in Italy go to the event, write up the report, send it to me. I would change the wording so it sounded like me, and I'd print it. So now they send it up to ours. So now when OSA called and said, did you go to the event? I say, nah, I couldn't make it. And that would give me more time to goof around on them. But I use basically their ideas of deception and acceptable truth and how to scheme to get things done from them. I mean, they taught me that, they all that. I once went to a meeting with, I think his name was Butterworth, maybe David. Is it David Butterworth?
David Butterworth? Oh, yeah, I knew him well.
He worked at OSA, right?
He did for a period. Yeah, that's right. Back in the day.
I met with him at a hotel because I was working on a project. This is before all this happened. While I was still working for OSA, I was working on a project to infiltrate a squirrel group in Boston. And so he met with me, and he's sitting and we're talking about what we could do and what the idea is, what our plans were. I think the plan was to get them off squirreling, doing something else, like get involved with shamans or something. I don't know. But whatever. He said to me at one point, have you done your false purpose rundown? Now, knowing that the false purpose rundown is supposed to handle evil purposes.
That's right.
I said, no. He said, oh, good. Meaning he was happy that I still had evil purposes. So I could do the OSA work for him. I mean, think about that.
Wow. That is a shockingly self-aware statement. Right? Especially out of David Butterworth. I mean, I liked that guy when I met him outside of his OSA personality because he got put into finance. And so he wasn't doing any OSA stuff when I met him. He was a finance guy. But not wow. Have you done your FPRD? No. Good.
No.
Oh my God. Such a Scientology thing to think.
Like, who thinks like that? So I remember that stuck with me so much. It's like, oh, great. He's happy that I still have evil purposes. Well, I guess I could. And just that stuck with me so much that I realized that I can do to them what they had me do to others by using those policies against them. And I still do that. I still do things. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes because I like to. I don't have to brag about my accomplishments. I see them out there and I see what happens, and I'm very happy about it. It brings me joy because I know even if it's not a direct getting someone out, eventually it'll help.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, it's just there's different things. For one of the things I did when I first left is I hooked up with Christy Watchter. She runs the Truth About Scientology site with all the completion lists.
Yep.
And I was so angry. I had been collecting on my own Scientology magazines. So I went out and I bought this big magnifying glass on a stand and a stand up. And I put those magazines there and I hand typed every single completion list. I did that for about 4 years. That's where you see all those names of graduates and what course. I did all the grunt work and Christy did all the brain stuff. I mean, she put it all together and makes everything match. That's not my shtick. But I got a lot of pleasure in just sitting there typing those because I knew that site was going to do a couple of things. It was going to allow people to see if their family's still in and doing courses. It's going to, when people do that, what do they call it when you look up your own name? You stick your name in the computer. They have I forget.
Oh, I don't know what they call that, but when you're looking at your own stuff.
When you're looking to see what's on the internet about you,
right.
You're going to go there. It's going to affect, it's going to help journalists who are reporting on Scientologists. I knew that it was going to have far-reaching effects,
yep.
not just pissing off Scientologists, but we were also able to do stats with that, like we were able to see completions of clears, or were they going up or down. We could do all kinds
right.
of. She was magical with that stuff. So for me, that was very. As the word cathartic, where I didn't have to think, but I was getting a lot done.
Yep.
And the other nice thing that she did with that site is we discussed, there was no OT3 stuff on there. It was all so that if you were a Scientologist and you landed there was safe things to read. Things that, that were not a head basher, but right. They were gentle, right. Including my guy's letter to me from Italy.
Oh, nice.
In there.
Yeah. Nice.
So, but that's that, and I think that website has had long-lasting effects. I know for journalists it certainly has. Tony uses it, and anyone that the recent Wall Street Journal used it to find out people's completions. Very important. And now I stopped doing that when Scientology stopped sending me mags. They cut me off because they didn't want me doing the list. But somebody picked it up. I don't even know who, but I'm very happy that they did. And so the completion list, but if you look, they're putting out a magazine like free wins like twice a year. So it's like they used to come out like once a month.
That's right. Oh, this is definitely there. And it's this kind of, maybe we could call it, I don't know, guerrilla warfare, the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff that isn't in front of the camera. And I try to point out to people that a great deal of the work that gets done in this space that is actually helpful, productive work for people who are inside is done off camera. You're not going to see it, hear about it, know anything about it other than what we can, sort of tell you about after the fact or, allude to. But, we don't want people knowing everything we're up to. But that site, for example, you just said, everybody relies on it, but nobody really thinks too much about the hours and hours and hours of work it takes to create it and keep it up,
Right. I mean, now I'm sure they take it and they probably scan it and OCRs and like 5 minutes later, they got a nice list, In 2000, 2001, they didn't, OCR was like, worse than being able to type it, So now I'm sure it's a breeze to get that done. But before it was just like I think I started wearing glasses shortly after that. A tiny little print. So, so
I know, because those magazines, they get the tiny little, it's like 8-point font, it's just tiny.
I big magnifying glasses, like
It's true. It's true. What now? Isn't there? Do you want to talk about this new site that is being put together? Should we talk about that, or should we not talk about that yet?
No, we should not talk about that. We should edit this out. We should
No,
edit
I
this
can
out.
clip that out. No problem.
Okay, good.
Just want to know if you wanted to go there or not.
No, but if you're going to clip it out, just so you know, it's going to be awesome. Just between you and I, it's going to be fabulous. We're doing a lot of work on it. It's slowly. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I had to read all 15 versions of the OT levels, which is OT1 original, new, OT2. So the only one that stays the same is OT3. There's no before. I'll tell you, I was a basket case when I got done with that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this stuff is nuts. Anyway,
oh my God.
Anyway,
don't even get me started. I know, and those earlier OTLs are just so goddamn confusing. But if I mean, because it was like what OT 3, 4, 5, 6, 7X or 3X or something. I mean, it was just so weird. Yeah. It was so weird.
And that was like and that was all before knots, the new era Dianetics.
That's right. That's right.
I was doing okay. I got through OT3, and it's funny when I go back now and reread Hubbard, because I also just finished this week reading the Sea Org Basic Qualified Staff Hat or something. Good Lord. And as you can see now, as I read it, I can see the indoctrination being forced in. I can see, welcome aboard, and then this is what we do, and we make it go right, and blah, 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 blah. And it seems like Hubbard, before I used to admire the admin tech when I was in. Now I'm looking at it like all he writes about is people screwing up and how to fix it. And he doesn't, it's all about, and this guy screwed up, and this guy screwed up, and you got to stop screwing up. And Jesus Christ, more screw ups. And he was complaining constantly about people being idiots. I mean, I was like, wow, I never read it that way the first time around. So very interesting.
Right. You're so spot on with that. So spot on. All right, let me see about what else I want to ask you about here. Now, in terms of here's something I'd like to ask you about, because this is something you have a window into an earlier time period with Scientology, right? Because you got involved, kind of OG, like way back in the day in the 70s. And there is no question after, I've spent years talking with my mom, who also got in the 70s, about how Scientology was then versus, how it changed. It did morph under Miscavige and become a, kind of a more cruel version of itself.
Oh, yeah.
How do you see that? How would you typify that?
I've seen criticisms of this. The facts are the facts, and the way it was is the way it was. I mean, when I got in 72, it was very still much like a lot of hippies, ex-hippies got into it, or, tree hugger types. And I remember going up to the Boston org, and they used to have big parties with beer kegs and a band, and it was all Scientologists, and we'd sing and we'd dance, and it was so much fun. And there'd be announcements or fundraiser for something, but it was fun. They would have Halloween parties, like come as you were, past life parties. You get dressed up, but it was fun. I mean, there was a fun element to it. I'm not saying it wasn't all still a crazy indoctrinating cult. It was, but the cruelty factor was not there.
Yeah.
The meanness and the harsh, no change, no, this is the way it is. There was no kindness at all. Where Scientology, people were like a little more mellow. Oh, you didn't get enough sleep. Okay, listen, go home, take a nap, come back. Now it's like, go to ethics because you didn't sleep. It's like, and I think that's obviously a huge part of why people would leave. It's like, who wants to put up with that crap? Yeah, and be in fear. Oh, that was another one of my my realizations that broke the wall. Earlier on, somebody said something to me like, "Are you afraid of your church?" And I'm like, yeah, I am. But that's
Yeah.
weird. Like pointing out, are you, that was a very direct question. Are you
That's
afraid?
a great question.
Yeah.
That's
And that hit
exactly
me.
along the lines of the kind of questions I want, that people could ask that just hits you right between the eyes.
Oh, well, why are you afraid? How come you're
Yeah.
afraid? And what's going on with that? Don't you think that's strange for a religion?
Yes.
So, but that's what happened. I was never afraid of Scientology. I mean, hey, I was on staff for 3 years still smoking pot for Christ's sake, but
Oh yeah, let's go back to that Narcanon for a minute. That's right. I wanted to ask you about that. So if I remember right, a guy named Ben,
Whitney Benitez.
yes, that's it. Benitez. I was trying to remember that. Yes, he started Narcanon by writing a letter to Hubbard while he was in prison, having availed
Mhm.
himself of some Scientology materials, and said, "This is good stuff. I think it could help people get off drugs. I want to put a program together, or I have an idea of a program, and let's run with it." This is the lore of how Narcanon
Right.
began. Is
Yeah, it's true. I
yeah,
met
pretty
Willie. So
accurate.
yeah. Yeah.
And this is the man who then died a few years later, who was running the show when you showed up.
No.
Oh, different person.
Well, he never became a Scientologist. He definitely was considered the founder, if you will. And they would wheel him around and say, this, bring him to events and stuff like that as somebody that was important. But he had no authority. He was originally Knocking On was run by the Guardian's office. Then it was switched over to Knocking on US, which the Guardian's office then ran Knocking on US. Then it went back to the Guardian's office. Then they formed Able, and the reason I think that they formed Able, and it's you can see it in the documents, is they wanted government money. And
Exactly, because it was this ABLE is the Association for Better Living and Education, and it's a Sea Org outfit, but it's presented as a secular nonprofit trust or something. Yeah,
it's Sea Org. It's under the OSA umbrella, if you will. They sort
yeah.
of separate. They did all this legal maneuvering so that the acceptable truth is, yes, the church does not control Narconon because they have a board of directors, and the contract between Able and Narconon is that of a consultancy, not a management. But then you go back and you read all the secret, do not read, eyes only. This is what we're really doing. So we are controlling these guys. And and you know that because as the director of Narconon, on the board of directors, I had to give them undated resignations. So, and
Oh, they pulled the same crap there. Okay, yeah.
they do that through all Scientology organizations. If you're on a board of directors anywhere in Scientology, at the same time you're appointed, you sign several undated, because there's books. OSA keeps a book, and the local Narconon kept a book, and somebody else had a book, probably not USGO. And as soon as you became persona non grata, they just dated your resignation and you're off. So they're totally controlled. But you can't write a check to the Church of Scientology from government money. But you can write one out to Able. And that's what they were looking. They wanted government money, and they want to be able to get a percentage for their consultancy, which is really their control. They wanted 10% of that money to come from, but again, they had to legally maneuver that. And that's why I think a big reason why Able was separated out, and they went through all those, crazy motions to get it that way. I don't think it worked. I don't know if the Narcanons get government funding now. I don't think so. I
I
don't even know
don't
if they
think
really
they
exist.
do. I think individual companies or corporations, definitely not, Narcanon Inc.
Right.
corporations, kind of like franchises under Narcanon, I think have applied for some government grants, but I don't think Narcanon as a whole has. I don't think, but if I'm wrong in the
Yeah.
comments, please can let me
You've
know.
been following up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's okay. So that's interesting, though, that you had that kind of intro or background to it. And I just have to ask you a little bit more about that marijuana thing. So you guys are all drug free, but you're smoking pot. Was that the 70s thing or what was that?
There was, I guess, I mean, it's funny. Everybody was smoking pot. We would actually go over to Pat's house, who was the ED at the time, and sit there and talk about knocking on and smoke pot and natter about, complain about knocking on US being a bunch of assholes, right? So yeah, so then they sent in a geo mission to get us to stop smoking the pot. They found out somebody tattled, somebody told, gave up an OW or something. And next thing you know, Bush, these two geo guys, and I don't know anything who the geo was at the time, and they're coming down, they're having us read keeping Scientology working and signing, documents that we won't smoke pot and blah 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 blah. And we did whatever they said. They left, we smoked pot. So then we didn't care. We didn't care because everybody felt like pot was okay.
Right.
Well, then eventually, when I became the ED, I made the decision, geez, I really should quit. Because if I get caught, it's going to look really bad. This is going to be terrible if I get caught smoking pot. So I gave it up. But so for 27 years while I was in Scientology, I didn't do drugs. I barely did aspirin. I went the other way. But it was smoking pot was Pat Healy, the guy who was the director. He used to get auditing while he was high on pot. So he was really way out there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a huge, I mean, I'm only, because it's such a huge no-no, such a huge no-no. I know sitting here right now, it would probably lessen the damaging effects of Scientology auditing if you did it while you were high. You probably wouldn't get, face full of nonsense that you get, when you're doing it straight. Wow. Okay. Now tell me more about your experience, I suppose, right? Or your perception of Scientology, then versus Scientology now. When did you see it change, or how did you see it morph? Because we have Hubbard going into hiding in the early 70s, but that's all kind of inner circle stuff. He, publicly, Scientology doesn't get a black eye until the raid in 1977 with the FBI showing up in PAC and, an Operation Snow White getting blown up. And then there is this, years-long reorg of the GO into OSA, and, the international management gets established, and there's this kind of, power rework in the 70s, in the late 70s and early 80s with the mission sort out and all this kind of stuff. But how much of that was filtering down to where you were and what you were aware of what was going on? What were you guys being told about the raid and all this other stuff?
The raid was, the only thing I remember about the raid was that somebody squealed. Somebody talked about Fight Club, and they weren't supposed to. That's how I took it. Because I remember coming in after the raid, and I was part of the shredding everything they could find. I mean, those dummies were, they used the word vet. They would take a razor blade and cut out certain words. They were taking green volumes, the big green volumes, and they were betting out L. Ron Hubbard's name in the green volumes. They were completely out of their minds with security. So I remember security because I joined in 70. I was a volunteer for the Guardian's office for almost a half a year while I was getting approval, because I had to have a special approval because I had taken LSD. And so the rule had just come out that prior to that, GEO staff could take LSD. They weren't Sea Org. They were separate from the Sea Org. Right. So just as I was getting in, they passed this new rule. So I had to do a petition, I think it was, to Jane Kember, who was the head of the Guardian's office, giving all my stats and all my accomplishments and how fabulous I was so that I could get into the Guardian's office. And that was approved. But for 6 months or so, I was doing all this work. And one of the things was after this raid, and, we didn't feel that, I didn't feel Scientology did anything wrong, because the briefings I had received was that the government and the evil SPs and the psychiatrists had loaded government documents or government files with false information about Scientology. And what we needed to do was replace that information with the truth. And so what I thought was they were doing like corrections, like, well, here's what you say, here's what we say. But they were going in there and stealing the stuff right out of the files.
Yeah.
Like stealing library books. That was a big deal too. To steal all the anti-Scientology library books. They put me on that. Cost me a fortune. I had to pay for those things. But anyway, yeah. So they were trying to get Scientologists to, I don't know. That what happened then after that? I lost my train of thought for a minute, but I did want to say,
no worries.
As it was getting, I noticed it was getting tighter and tighter and tighter, security wise. And one thing that happened, actually, it was probably on this chain of things that woke me up. I just realized another important, very important part is I signed up, or somebody signed me up to do the Decem course, which is free. And the Decem pack was a binder of, it wasn't HCO policy letters or bulletins. It was a book.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been. And as I'm reading the book and doing the course, I came upon a new definition of second dynamic. Now, second dynamic had always been, love, sex, marriage, procreation, children.
Yep.
And this basically said that second dynamic was creation.
Yes.
And I saw it and I thought, why are they doing this? Because so that Sea Org members wouldn't want children, maybe? Like, I'm thinking, if because
That's insightful.
You're supposed to have your purposes aligned or your dynamics, like one should match two and two should match three. So if you have a second dynamic and you're in the Sea Org and there's no kids, well, how you go? Okay, so you should just create. And so I thought, this is squirrel. This is definitely squirrel that they did this. So I wrote to, I don't know, ITC, some sort of alphabet soup. I sent up a knowledge report and I said to the course soup, let me know when you hear something. I'll come back on course. I'm not doing this course because this is out tech or out admin or whatever it is, squirreling. Nobody replied. I never went back on course. So, but it was that. Oh, I'll tell you another thing that I should write this down. Another thing was going to events, and prior, when I would go to events, they'd throw the stats up there, and they'd have numbers.
Yeah.
So, 10x, but they'd start at 5, and it went to 50, and you saw it. All of a sudden, all these graphs that were not only flashing at you fast, but there's no numbers.
That's right.
Like, no numbers. That's
right.
So that was another little. There were a bunch of things like that at the time added up. Just but that was another one. But that course soup thing might have been that December thing might have been the first one. I said, no, this is wrong, and nobody would answer. And it's funny. I always think when you approach someone who's really deep in, it's necessary to discuss alteration of the tech, because that is a huge button. That's a huge go button. And it puts David Miscavige or whoever's in charge in doubt that there'd be a change. Not that he's beating up people, because that's not even real to these people. That's not even real to Scientologists. I didn't believe that. No way. They're making that up. Yeah. But altering the tech is like, whoa. I mean, how many times have you read Keeping Scientology Working this lifetime? Way too many, right? And you know that altering the tech is the biggest crime in the universe. And so alterations are very important, or something on that line to get someone to look, or even say, why don't they show the numbers anymore on those graphs? Well, they don't want the SPs to see how we're expanding. Yeah, bullshit. That's not the reason.
No,
they're hiding. They're hiding.
That's
numbers.
right.
So
death by 1,000 cuts. I had the exact exact same problems. And it's funny because the first place I ran into that definition of second dynamic being creativity was on the life orientation course, which was released in like 91. And that was the first time I ran into that because I hadn't done that earlier December course. And I wondered when I saw it, where the hell did they get this from? Because this is a change. And I went along with it because I was in the middle of full-time training. I just want to get back to my org and I want to mess around. But, you know, but there it is. And I was like, oh, this is new. This is different. I wonder where this comes from. And of course, there's no source given. This pack is the source. And you're like, well, all right, I guess it's Hubbard. And this is where you just have to blind faith that my church knows what they're doing, you know, and off you go. And that's kind of what they demand of you, is this blind faith that they know what they're doing. You know, I was, you know, and sometimes when you send queries up like you did, you know, the hammer comes down, and I'd had that happen to me sending queries up to RTC. And of course, the lesson you learn is don't send queries to RTC, right? That's right. That hammer. Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Funny, definitely. But yeah, little things like that. Just changing, altering things, and then the stats, the events. I would leave events and I couldn't remember a single thing that happened.
Right.
I mean, you know,
right.
When did people say, "How was the event?" Oh, it was fabulous. So what did they say? I don't remember. Yeah,
that's right.
You know, someplace like in South Africa or the middle of Africa, they're doing something with some guy. You know, that's about it. You know, because the speed and they throw all this stuff at you. You know, bash, 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 and I was like, wow. Yeah, no, there's something wrong here. But yeah, there was a big difference once Miscavige took over, and it was, yeah, even the mission, my local mission, he left. He was a OT8, class 8 OT7 back in the day, OT7, and he left Scientology. He went out screaming about all this, but I thought he just lost his mind. I didn't really think that he was saying it was true.
It's funny, isn't it?
The things, how it changes now. And you know, it's funny. Back in 1972, 73, 73, when I joined, I didn't know anything about con artists. I didn't know. The only thing I knew about con artists, I think the movie The Sting had just been released with Robert Redford. Right. And they were two con artists that pulled off this big sting. That's what I thought a con artist was. I didn't think con artists actually existed for real and were this complicated. It just didn't even make sense to me. And then when I finally got it, it was just more like fuel on the fire. God damn, he's a con man to boot, you know, and he got me good, and I'm mad, you know. So many things to be upset about. But going through them and processing them and having someone to talk to about it, which is the other thing I wanted to point out. When I left and joined ours under this pseudonym, under this anonymous name, I was extremely fortunate to get myself surrounded by a group of non-Scientologists who were on ARS. Dave Turetsky, Scott Plutik, who's an attorney, two other attorneys, a journalist from Canada, and they had this private little room on Internet Relay Chat. It's like a Discord but text, you know, the old-fashioned way. And they had a room, and they helped me come through it. I would go to them and say, how do I say this in English? You know, because I didn't know how to speak English anymore. All my concepts, like how do you say service fact in English? You know,
yes.
You know, yes. What's the word for this in English? And also I would just communicate stuff, and they would gently like poke little holes in things for me that, very kind. And I wasn't dealing with their crazy Scientology, getting off of Scientology as well as me. I mean, Scientologists can help each other, no doubt, but sometimes when you're dealing with another one who's going through that, they have so much trauma that that's not necessarily helpful to
Right.
be with someone who hasn't come through on the other side of it, at least somewhat,
Yeah.
because you're liable to agree with stuff that's not correct, or just you don't see the outness in what the person's saying. You don't see that that's nuts. And these people were like, they weren't telling me I was nuts. They were like, well, take a look at it this way, or blah, 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 blah. And just general conversation about Scientology and what they were doing. They set up I helped them set up there was a website that's not there anymore. It's called readslacken.com. And we worked and we got all the people who had been scammed in his Ponzi scheme. And I was going through magazines looking for names on this list to see if they were Scientologists. And they put a nice little website together explaining who got taken for a ride and how many Scientologists and blah, blah. And just watching them work was very enlightening on how the information that you can take from Scientology's files or public documents or magazines and put it together and show this is what's going on. It was a whole education for me. And so I was lucky that way, because some people don't have like a stable group or a stable person to help them while they're reeling through this disaster that they're trying, whether, whatever it is, because you're not right in the mind for a long time, as far as I can tell. I mean, it was like, you think like L. Ron Hubbard for a long time, and you have to like get L. Ron Hubbard out of your head and the way he thought, what would Ron do? I mean, that was my mantra, what would you do here? So I didn't, for the longest time, I was afraid to make a decision. I'm like, am I going to make the right decision? Am I doing this right? I worried about everything for a while, and to have someone who could say, okay, calm down now. This is what calm down. You're getting kind of crazy here, Patty. Let me tell you what you can do. All those guys were very, very, I am so fortunate in so many ways to have hooked up with the people surrounding me that were very helpful to me, and not hateful types, but lovers, really people who want to expose Scientology and doing it right, as far as accurate, truthful, no baloney, no schemes, just like, let's get it out there. And that's what, you don't need to lie. You don't need to make up anything. It's bad enough.
Exactly. Oh my God, tell me about it. You have to laugh. First off, let me say that it was so lucky that they were there, that they were giving of their time, that you were, that you had that cushion to land. And because you're right, so many people don't end up in a place like that where they have friendly assistance. And this is, just to throw this in there, we did not arrange this, people, but to throw in this plug, for the Aftermath Foundation, because this is exactly the kind of work I get to help people with, is exactly what she was just describing. It's not therapy, it's just help. It's just a guiding, let's get your feet on the ground and let's help you out kind of a flow. And that's, what I get to do with people. And I consider myself very lucky to be able to do so, through the Aftermath, or,
whatever. Yeah.
contact me. So, anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, it's a thing. What are your thoughts? I have to ask you about this because, I mean, again, you've been around this stuff longer than I have in the out of Scientology space. But, when I first got out back in 2013, going down the rabbit hole and stuff, I was reading stuff about L. Ron Hubbard body doubles and CIA conspiracies, and how, MK Ultra was all about, absconding with the OT tech so they could, remote view and telepathically control people's minds and stuff using Scientology because it's all so powerful. And I saw so many of these, yeah, right. And I saw so many of these conspiracy theories within the ex-Scientology space being forwarded, mostly ironically, by ex-OSA staff in the ex-Scientology world. It seems that they get into such an extreme headspace about Scientology that even when they come out, they're still all bent up and twisted up about it. What have you seen this stuff, and what did you think when you ran into it?
Well, yeah, I mean, Scientologists, ex-Scientologists, well, Scientologists, first of all, are very, there's not a conspiracy that they don't like. I mean, it's
Right?
like, oh, wow, yeah, definitely. You read all about LRH talking about Smirsh. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, but, I, somewhere along the line, and I think it was this group of non-Scientologists, they sort of set me straight on the whole conspiracy thing and how that works, and how you can tell, um, basically, bullshit from non-bullshit, how to do that, the baloney detection kit, that that
Carl
type of thing.
Sagan for the win.
Exactly. So
Yes.
that's the type of stuff that if you read it, if you never get to read it, you don't know that there's another way of looking at this. So you can get so caught up. And it's interesting because just recently this happened to me. Tony came out with an article about Hubbard and the occult.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, now I've been out for 25 years. This is an admission. Uh, for the longest time, even though I was out and I was hardcore out, I could never deal with that fact. I could never deal with the fact that Hubbard was involved with that. I always thought it was a lie. And then a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, Tony or somebody wrote a very complete article that I forced myself to read. And I said, okay, I accepted it, but I wasn't happy about it. I was I was embarrassed. I mean, I was
Right?
mortified, right?
Right?
I was like, really? And then the recent one he came up with the Nazi thing, I'm like, oh Jesus! Now we got Nazis too. I got to do a cult and Nazis. I don't know if I can deal with this.
Right? Right? Right?
Such a like, how stupid am I? It's like it was when I went back to that old thing I had. Like, boy, was I a dumbass for thinking this stuff. And I finally had worked myself out of that. Like, no, you're okay. You worked your way out. You're fine. You were sucking in. You were conned. I was able to understand it all, but that damn occult thing with the Nazis just set me off again. And I finally I read the article again, and I took a deep breath and said, okay, like, don't be so hurt about it. It's true, but it was like really it cut me for some reason. It really did.
Tell me about it. Oh, tell me about it. It's so funny, Patty, how many parallels you and I have in our recovery journey. Because I said as much, in another show recently. It took me years to get my head around, what is the occult and what the hell is this Hubbard association with it, and the OTO and Crowley and tarot decks and magic, and I knew that Hubbard had discussed this stuff in detail in some of his lectures because I listened to them and I was fascinated when he would talk about the wand and the hat and the bunny and the history of magic, and he'd just come up with this stuff out of the middle of nowhere in a lecture. He just like dumped this data on you about the history of magic, and you're like, where the hell is this coming from? And how does he know this, right? And it was just kind of come and go because Hubbard did that with a lot of things. And you didn't really give it too much attention. You just thought, well, okay, the guy's a worldly guy and he knows a lot of stuff. But then when you're out and you start connecting the dots to Crowley and to the OTO and the cross and the symbols and the Scientology symbols, and it's undeniable. They come right out of this stuff. And you just go, oh my God, what the hell was I actually involved in? And it's embarrassing and it's humiliating and it definitely challenges your intelligence. And you're like, how did I not see this before? Well, because there was no way you could have. I mean, it's all hiding in plain sight, which is why Hubbard was laughing at us the whole time, because he knew he was hiding it in plain sight. The Order of the Golden Dawn. What the? I mean, when I found out that was a Hermes Trismegistus thing, I was like, what? What is this? Oh my God! I wanted to shoot somebody.
I know it's so embarrassing, and I don't know why. It was definitely the hardest of all the things to swallow. I could swallow Xenu, I could do all that, but man, that occult thing really set me off. And it's funny to acknowledge it myself, because when I stayed away from it so long, it was like I knew it was true, but I couldn't let it in. You know, it's funny how it works.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
really, the way to go is straight at it, read it, decide. You know, look at it, um, and don't listen to anybody else. You know, just read what's there and do your own research. And you know, I trust Tony and whoever else. People like Chris Owen, they write fabulous pieces with documents to back up everything they say, and that's very important, obviously, for me and for anybody who's doing research. So yeah, but that was it's funny, you know, 25 years later, I'm still peeling stuff off, and that's okay. You know, nothing embarrassing about that at all. It's you know, I don't have any training. I missed that boat as far as when I left. I went straight at him. I didn't. I kept the simplest job I could, so I could dedicate all my time to going after him. And yeah, it's just such a strange ride, but kind of interesting, you know.
Isn't it?
Interesting,
Isn't it? It takes you.
Oh,
It does. It takes you places you just never imagine it's going to take you. I never ever imagined 12 years ago when I started, you know, YouTube, that I would be ever knowing things that I know now about, you know, the occult and Gnosticism and, you know, guardian spirits and elemental spirits and, you know, all Madame Blavatsky. I didn't even know who the hell Madame Blavatsky was. Never heard of her my entire life, you know, and now I find out she's a central figure in, you know, pretty much the entire New Age movement. And most people who are involved in the New Age movement have no idea where this stuff comes from. You
no,
know, no.
right,
And in our ignorance, we fashion this worldview that is just wildly wrong. You know, it's amazing.
yeah,
It's amazing.
it's been a wild trip, and I'll tell you, I kind of it was horrible for a few years while I was coming out of it, but I'm so happy to be on the other side of this,
Oh,
and I like the fact that um, it's sometimes challenging, but I actually enjoy looking in and being insightful, or, or or confronting my demons or my bad habits or whatever it is, because I want to get rid of so much stuff and just be a better, you know, I want to be a better person. You know, it helps. And again, I was somebody who was not a nice person. I will admit that people were afraid of me. I was very bullyish towards other staff. Um, yeah, I was not somebody I liked. I would have liked, and if people knew me, they probably may not thought well of me, because I was not a good person, and I used my position in OSA to not be bothered by staff. People would be like, "Hey, you know, you need to come in here and talk to us. I'm doing a project for OSA. Get away from me." You know, it's like I could leave events. I didn't get stuck at events with the door locked, because I'd walk up to the guy and say, "I'm security, move." You know, I liked that. But 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 I've had to deal with the fact that I did that stuff, and it's okay. It's okay to deal with that, you know, and
mm-hmm.
recognize it. You know, it's probably sometimes it's tough to swallow, but you know, you got to swallow. You got to do it. You know, there's no getting away from it.
Nope.
I end up being a lunatic otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, and very, very unhappy. And I spend my life trying to be happy. And exposing Scientology is one of the happiest things I do.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Aside from my dog.
Get out of my head, Patty.
I know, it's right. It's wild. I'm so happy to hear this. And let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you something personal. You when you first started doing videos and stuff, I didn't particularly listen to your stuff, and I didn't particularly like listening to your stuff. And it was not you, it was me. And I realized this because I knew what you were talking about was something I didn't know about, how the mind works and all, a lot of term, but your education brought you a different understanding and a deeper understanding of how it all worked. And I think I was at a, I call it a flat point. I didn't need to learn anything more, right?
Yeah.
I was done. I got it. I got it. And you were introducing, or you were causing me to have to think more. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to. And so I ignored you. Um, but now I've watched your videos and I've talked to you and I see what you do. And I'm like, Patty, what a jerk. You should have been listening to the guy the whole time. But anyway, I want you to know that it wasn't you, it was me.
Oh,
Now I love watching your videos and I love talking to you. And I'm so glad that you and I are in each other's heads about this because there's not a lot of people who can think like this. So,
are you right?
That's been a bad
Exactly. We gotta stick together, us crazy ex-Scientologists. That's right. Well, Patty, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up now. We've talked for an hour and a half now. We've had a great chat. This is more than I expected. I'm so happy to have done this with you. Thank you very much for sharing your time and your experiences with me. It's yeah, it's been
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Very, very much.
awesome.
I'll see you around. Take care, honey.
You bet. And folks out there, if you like the show, think it's, entertaining, informative, educational, consider supporting it. And otherwise, subscribe, like, share, do all the things. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.